Hey everybody, Matt Rolfe here, excited for another episode of Around the Booth. And I want to set up front what this show is all about. And the show is all about having leadership-focused conversation for our industry so we could share best practices, have some peer-to-peer connection through conversation and sharing. And really, hopefully, my want for you through today is to hear a couple ideas, concepts, or things that we share that can help you break down what's happening in your operation and then allow you to have a solution to move forward to get you the results that you want and deserve. Today, I'm really excited to have my friend and guest on the show, Jen Belanger, and obviously our host, Jay Ashton. We'll make a full introduction in a second.
Cisco is Canada's leading restaurant supplier with more than 14 locations across the country, servicing every province and territory. We are grateful for our partnerships and proud to service our customers from St. John's, Newfoundland to Victoria, BC. With the most distribution sites in Canada, we are recognized for our national reach and local connection. Cisco services every community size, from every major city to every small town. We are relentlessly innovating to ensure you have the products and services you need, no matter your location, with a coverage area that's continuously expanding. A partnership with Cisco guarantees access to the industry's best distribution network, keeping you on trend and stocked with fresh products and fresh ideas. Cisco Canada provides a broad range of food and non-food products to both independent and chain restaurant customers and other away-from-home locations, such as healthcare and educational facilities. No matter your cuisine type or culinary capabilities, we can help. Our products are sourced locally in Canada and within our specialized global network of responsible suppliers. Our categories include meat and poultry, seafood, dairy, produce, bakery and desserts, food service supplies, beverages, specialty and world food products, and pantry staples. Locally focused, our regional teams provide the hands-on customer service that sets us apart, ensuring you have what you need when you need it. Visit cisco.ca to learn more.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Jay, I love those new reels. I haven't seen either of those, the intro and then that new, I don't want to call it a commercial, but the new sizzle reel.
It was better. It's better than the Brussels one that we watched 14 times.
I liked it. I memorized it. I'm inspired by it. I cook a lot more Brussels sprouts now, so it worked. But we did run that one a few times at the Restaurants Canada show, and it's great to see you, Jay. And
Awesome.
Thanks again for the opportunity and to work with you and have all those interviews at the show.
Yeah, no worries. This is going to be awesome. So I'm going to let you take over and dive in. I'm going to do little things in the back end, but I'm excited to hear all this great conversation today with Jennifer. So Jennifer, welcome to today's show as well.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I also like Brussels sprouts. I caught that was the trend on the last video. Thanks. Happy to be here.
And thanks, Jen. Thanks so much for joining us today and being part of this conversation around leadership and rebuilding, rebounding. You've heard, both of us has talked about a little bit about healing from the pandemic. And one thing that was in that sizzle reel to start off from the Cisco run there was the word relentless. And I think that's one thing I'm watching in leaders and I really admire about you. I'm going to explain a little bit about how I got introduced to Jen, and we've done some work recently, but she really is a leader that I got exposure to at a distance. I heard of her. I got a chance to be in restaurants that she led, and just these great properties, and the way that people spoke about her leadership and spoke about her focus. And to steal that word from this Israel, her relentless commitment to the guest experience through the staff experience. And we're going to get more into this later, but Jen, I just really welcome you to the show and wanted to give you a second so the audience can hear, kind of tell us your hospitality journey, kind of where did it start? What are some of the peaks and valleys of your experience, or where you've worked, and where are you now and what are you focused on?
Sure. Thank you. So, I started in hospitality. I, grew up in King City, Oak Ridges area, and worked for a little diner called Kathy's Burgers for my entire high school career. So I started serving there, probably far too young. Serving the construction guys coming in for lunch and burgers and fries and things like that. But I highlight that because I learned a ton there. I think it was a good foundation. The owners there were meticulous with just providing awesome feedback, guest name usage. The owner knew everyone. It was a really great couple named Nora and Jay. But anyway, I don't want to dwell on that. I studied journalism at Ryerson, really funded my way through school by working for the Keg. I think that's, to this day, one of those most memorable places that I've worked. A place that just really got hiring people based on attitude. They taught great standards. They created great kind of foundation for me with regards to a good training, solid training path, and the importance of onboarding in an organized and structured way. And it was just a really fun, talk about culture. You may have heard this before, but the Keg culture is, we've heard they're being called keggers. It's a real thing. So worked for the Keg for a long time, then actually left journalism and went on to Key, which was conceptualized by the owners of the Keg. Worked for some great people there. It was kind of my first step into more luxury environments. I really wanted to expand my wine knowledge, so I took the ISG, the International Sommelier Guild course, and then put my eyes on overseas. So I actually applied to Etihad Airways. It's the airline of the United Arab Emirates, and based out of Abu Dhabi. I was the only female hired in 2009 out of Ontario. Yeah, so I went with I told myself if I got the job, I was 27. I was terrified to leave home. I packed my bags and went to the Middle East. There, I oversaw the premium zone. So I was the food and beverage manager for sort of first-class airlines, the really beautiful airlines that you see with, prayer rooms and showers and bars and overseeing that. The lesson I'd say I learned most from there was just learning the sort of adaptability with working with a different crew every day, something that I still carry with me. Fast forward to now, really, I came back to Canada after a few years there. I did a year in France, learned French, taught English, and traveled a ton. And then was called back actually by a headhunter for the McEwen Group. Mark McEwen to this day is one of the most epic leaders and just a humble, wonderful person to work for. So was there for about 8 or 9 years. Had a baby, had mat leave, and then this really interesting opportunity came up, which is where I am now. I'm trying to give you the highlight reel. I don't want to linger on, but I'm at the Bruce Hotel in Stratford. I'm a hotel general manager now. So all my previous experience was in food and beverage management. Always intrigued by the people aspect, the thing that really wasn't measured on the bottom line, and just fostering really healthy work environments. So our eyes are on the prize now at this hotel that I'm at, a small boutique hotel in southwestern Ontario, and we're looking for 5 diamond accreditation. We want to really be on the map for that, I should say. And that catches you up to speed basically on a little bit about me.
No, I love it. And I think anybody listening, and a lot of what we do on the show is with intention. So today's questions are with intention. So you can take them if you wanted to drive a conversation with your team, management team, or whole leadership team. But there's a pattern there of vision and clarity of where you wanted to go and what you wanted to focus on. And that's something that I admire. I always say that people spend as much time planning their vacation as they do their life or their careers or their direction. But if you hear about just those strategies from working through journalism to with intention, moving from the Keg to Key, then moving to luxury, working for one of the, best known airlines and guest experiences on the planet, really not as well known here, but if you go global, that's it, right? To fly Emirates and anything that they're connected with. And then to come back and, work with Chef Mark McEwen at the stage that they were at now, and then having the chance to be a guest at the Bruce Hotel recently and see this incredible property tucked in Stratford. I can tell you it's a one of those experiences when you pull through the gate and up to the front to check in, and your front desk staff come out to greet. My first time I could feel my heart rate go up. I was excited to go in. I was a bit reminding me of my first experience pulling up to a Ritz or Shangri-La, but in this beautiful boutique property that kind of takes over the whole area as you pull up at night. It's a great experience. It's an incredible property, but more importantly, thanks to your leadership from our recent time together, it's an incredible team. So, and really what I want to do now is I want to get into the conversation of just what does leadership look like? So what does great look like? What does leadership failure look like in our experience? Without highlighting individuals, but we've all had exposure to leaders that just really didn't work for us. And then what the idea, and we want to frame for the audience now is we're going to take you on a bit of a conversation journey. We're going to pull Jay in to answer some of these questions as well. This isn't an interview, it's a fluid conversation. But if you're taking the time to listen to this, listen with intent. What can you hear, learn, or act on that's going to help you? Or what similar experiences might you have had? And how can we use those experiences to drive different results in our operation? So before I go any farther, let's just have some fun with this question. And we've all had great leaders in our lives and our careers. But who's the favorite leader? And I'm going to answer this question too. And Jay's going to answer as well. But Jay knows that his boss is listening, so it's kind of skewed a bit. We set him up with this softball, so he gets that covered for his performance review coming up. Don't mess this up, Jay. But Jen, who was your favorite leader you ever worked for, and why did you love being on their team so much? Like, kind of what were their traits or patterns or style that stood out to you?
Yeah. You know what? I've been really fortunate to have a couple like stand out, but the general manager at the keg at the time, Tap Alacorpi, really lovely gentleman, who took a chance on me when I was quite young. He was just genuine. And I think that people can sense that. You sort of gauge the culture as soon as you walk in. And I appreciate your nice comments about the Bruce, but we want you to feel that genuine and authentic sense of the culture. And that comes from leadership, but also trickling that down to the staff. Mark McEwen as well, absolutely no doubt. Such clarity of vision. I think I get that a little bit from him, if I may say. And he had the ability to trim the fat on things that weren't necessary and to just double down on things that really were working well. And
did that term trim the fat, was that some part of the language that was like, can you tell me one time when Chef Mark McEwen kind of said, hey, we got it. And I'm assuming, like, what was the tone or direction? Because I know that's one leader that I don't get nervous meeting a lot of people, but going into his office, there was no laptop, his eye contact, his body language, just his presence in a room. Yeah. I wasn't intimidated, but I was excited and nervous. But right. Tell me what's the time when he said, hey, we got to trim the fat here. Like,
my initial thought is labor. I was a general manager of a beast of a restaurant. So it was trim the fat. Let's trim the fat. No, watch your start times and watch your end times and that kind of thing. The menu development is really close with working with the chefs in the restaurant, and trimming the fat, meaning not the actual fat on the meat, but serving things that are thoughtful to guests and not rethinking the wheel. They can be tacos and they're absolutely delicious in these luxury environments that he has. Even my first meeting with him, I remember being, it was a 10:30 a.m. appointment in the bar. I arrived at 10:21, and by 10:28, I had the job because he's like, well, you seem great. And that's Mark McEwen. Like, let's cut to the chase. So, but he's just very thoughtful and calculated and so in touch with the market that, I don't know, I just trim the fat is one I take from him. Not sure if that answered your question, but a little bit of everything.
Yeah, it does, right? So it brings a story up, I think, about, in that restaurant, which you haven't named, so I'm not going to name it either. So yeah, so I don't know. But there was an appetizer there with lobster spoons, which is something simple, but the last time I had it, you actually brought it out with Chef Darcy. So, but it was just incredible. I thought it was just something simple, but something great. But one thing that I look at and what we're trying to do is look at these incredible leaders and we find patterns, right? This focus or clarity from the keg and the leader that you worked with there, or Chef Mark McEwen. It's not about Mark. That's not what we're talking about here. Great leaders have absolute clarity in the direction that they're going. And what gave Chef Mark McEwen the right to build a restaurant brand of that size in the city of Toronto at that time? He did. He shared it out loud. He got his own funding, made his own, like whatever he did on that path. It was next to impossible, but sometimes we need to think it here and then share it with others who believe in us, like yourself, that support the journey. And I like to trim the fat story. I thought sometimes there's some really good stories around comments like that. Sometimes there's some really strong experiences in times like that, but I love it. And Jay, I'm going to bring you in here now before I share with the deep. Well, you weren't muted there when you went. So tell me about who is one of your favorite leaders you've had the opportunity to work with, and it could have been pre-Cisco, could have been a coach as a kid, but who stood out to you?
I have a lot of leaders right now that I work with at Cisco that are really, I guess, pretty incredible at what they're doing. I'm not just saying it because they're going to watch us, and maybe they will or won't, but I'll just be honest. the two leaders that I work with today have really, I guess, in a sense, respected a lot of my time and stuff like that. Because as you know, I kind of work 24/7. But have really allowed me to give time back to myself. And a lot of leaders, in a sense, will just work you, and expect amazing results. And I actually think the leaders I have today are allowing me to, be a little bit more free in a sense of giving my time back, because they're kind of leading by example within that as well. And I think that's so important. But um, I think it's just the fact that they're more respectful of my time, and also being more aware of what my contribution is to our company. And I think that's important. I think leadership. I think a lot of people define leadership in multiple ways, and I think that's perfectly fine. I think that's actually pretty cool to have that, because you may see it differently than I do and everything like that. But I can sure tell you, there's a lot of leaders out there that don't. And we had the chance to sit on Simon Sinek's show last week and watch him. And I have been a Simon fan for a bazillion years since he started. And I really believe in his, mindset of what leadership is and his philosophy behind it. And I think a lot of leaders, and the thing that I look at, I had a big team at one time before COVID, and it was just the fact of you have to work that muscle. You have to work your leadership muscle. And if you're not doing that, I tell you, you get flabby. And the stuff is just garbage within what you're leading. And I'll be honest with you. And I'm sorry, I can talk for days about this, but
It's important.
I led one time when I moved over to corporate. This is like 9-10 years ago. It was all about me. It was about, how can I move up that chain fast? How can I get to the top? How can I, promote myself right to the top? And then it wasn't until my last boss, before the two that I work with today, came in there and pretty much said, you're not that good. Like, not in that way, but it was that, the reflection, let's say. And it wasn't until then I started to realize that I had to lead through others. And then I really started lifting my team up. Things got better. It became contagious as well. And you almost wanted more of watching other people shine than yourself. And then you shined better because of that. And I think more leaders need to do that, is put their people up on the pedestal and not worry about yourself so much, other than working out that muscle. That's the way I see leadership. So there's my little spiel about that, man. Thanks for putting me on the spot.
Don't worry, there's more to come. But one thing, and my job as a coach is to really watch a lot of times for physical reactions. So the one thing that, if you're watching this, and you might have picked up on the cues, but Jay's reaction to when he started to talk about having freedom, having the ability to work on, growth, being given, in some respect, permission of time, being left to focus on something, just the way that he reacted to that showed how important it is. And when I dig in with people, what they want is the ability to learn and grow and build trust. And some people say they want to be given space so they feel that they have that innovation still in them. And I think it's, you look at how experienced Jay is, and how critical that is at this stage. When we look to our leaders inside our operations right now, are we giving them space to learn, grow, fail? And whatever that looks like for them.
You got to mention that more is fail.
Yeah.
And we don't.
Okay, let's go in here. What's the biggest leadership failure that Jen, let's get some real examples here. Do you mind if I pivot here, Jen? But Jen, and you look at, I'll share mine to give Jen a second to think about it, because I kind of set up the question and it triggered something in my mind. I just don't want to put Jen on the spot because it's a big question. My biggest failure, I had about 3 exit discussions for people that were leaving in an appropriate amount of time. So I was disappointed that they were moving on to great new opportunities. And my company's small, so most people go through it. And my biggest failure, I've had other ones that are probably more dramatic, but one that's more a leadership lesson, was 3 consecutive leaders said, Matt, one of the challenges is you never let us fail here. You try to, and I've got the way that I grew up around traumatic situations. I don't want to see anybody get hurt, so I'll do whatever I can to protect them, but I actually limited their growth. And these were 3 different personalities in about an 18-month period that said the same thing. And it hit me with the first, and it rocked me with the third person to realize I'm in people's way. I'm stunting their growth. And by stunting their growth, I'm actually creating an environment that they feel they need to step out of the company at a certain point. And there's the awareness. I'm so grateful for people sharing. And Jen, you know, 2 of them that shared that with me. But it was a failure on my part with good intentions. Jen, what's your kind of biggest leadership lesson? You know, we framed around the word failure.
I mean, I think that I think having lacking the prioritizing the time to connect with people. I think I've really I hope I've really corrected that with my current team. Yeah. You can get bogged down. If you hear me say this a lot, Matt, you get bogged down by operation when you're in really high volume places. Yeah. So rather than having exit interviews, are you having staying interviews? Are you having just a quiet moment, even if there's no agenda on your one-on-ones, to say, actually, how are you? And I see you. And do you feel you're making an impact? Yeah. So I would say, kind of when I was 27 managing to 35, didn't really do that. Didn't realize how important it was. And then I'd have a reaction where, you're getting resignations and things like that. So that importance of really connecting and fostering sort of a genuine sense of belonging with your people, I'd say I missed the mark on in the past.
And what was there an experience that just you shifted, or it became clear from you to be like, hey, I can drive ops all day? And Jay kind of said this as well in his share, but was there a moment or experience in time where you said, okay, I see, I hear, I'm going to make this change?
I think just feeling like I was spinning my tires and not seeing results. And, management is a bit of sort of repetition and reminding, staff to carry a tray or do certain things. But you sort of soul search in those moments and say, why isn't it working? So I think it was sort of a collective sort of scattering over time. I mean, we could probably talk about the pandemic and what that's done and how staff need us to show up differently. That may be another whole segue here, but I think that the pandemic really highlighted that for me as well, that people needed that sense of connection and belonging, and me being able to share the objectives that I have and the vision that I have. We need to over communicate at this point and reassure people that everything's okay. And that may be, again, a pandemic thing.
Yeah, I'd love to come back to that, because I was grateful to be in a room, recently with Jen and her team, and when I saw you share your vision, share the actual details of the vision. So not only where we want to go, but what are the processes and actions of how we achieve it. But so that's great. That's the tactic, right? But the relationship that seemed to mold quickly with the team that just went to the next level, like we'd seem like certain things dropped out of the way, or that were in our way got removed. Mm-hmm. And there seemed to be this clarity and kind of flow for your team, which was created intentionally by you. Here's the plan. Here's why it matters to you. And one thing we talked about for any leader out there, that, like, I've seen more tears this year than through the pandemic. Yeah. When I bring up the word seen, valued, and heard. So I look at people in the eyes and say, what people really want is to be seen, valued, and heard. And it's amazing, the leaders, and a lot of times the ops leaders that are in it, they're the core. They're interfacing daily with your guests, and they're interfacing daily with your staff. And when they get asked those questions, people want to be seen, valued, and heard, especially post-pandemic. So we're going to come back to some of this. Jay, what would you share as your experience of your biggest leadership failure? Thank you for prompting this question.
Well, I think it's just really putting myself first. Putting myself first was the biggest failure I've had. And I think it's okay, though. I think it's okay. If you continue, it's not okay. But I think this realization of that you do that. And I think that happens a lot in business, is that you put yourself forward without even intending to do it, but it's just something that you want, and you may have this driver. And then I think as long as you realize it and you're leading a team, it may be different when you're not leading a team, and then you can be number one in your mind. But I think when you're leading a team, as Simon always says, is that you have to be in their service, right? You have to push them forward. And I think that's the way I see it. And that was my biggest failure when I first started leading the team across Canada. And it really hit when I won't say her name, but she knows who she is. It said, you got to kind of reflect, because they weren't following me. They were not doing anything I wanted. And I led without authority, right? So they didn't report into me. Sure. And that is one of I'll tell you, you want to be a good leader, is lead, 60 some people, and none of them report into you.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest challenge, right? That was like one of the best gifts I've ever had, was then you really go, okay, what am I doing? They don't have to listen to you. They don't have to follow your direction, your ideas, your vision. And then you're like, a lot of that, and they weren't at the beginning. They're like, we're not going to listen to this guy. They're not gonna, whatever. And by the end, after reflecting on that and getting those wake-up calls, is like, wow, it's time to shape up and start putting them forward. And it was awesome. And like I said, it was a drug. When you start doing it,
Yeah,
you start seeing people shine, and then you're just like, man, this is good. And then you become a bigger and better leader and stuff like that. And you have impact on people so much. And I think sometimes we forget the impact that we have on people, not just at work, but what they do at home, their life, their family, everything else. And we all have an impact on that when we lead or not lead well. So yeah. I could talk days about this stuff. I love this.
This is the good side. We're kind of below surface levels, where the idea of the show is, let's have the real conversation that needs to be had. One thing I like, Jay, about what you shared there, though, is you shared about the ability where putting myself first was something that was an opportunity. And I had a therapist say to me recently, like, talk about boundaries. And I understood the concept of boundaries for others, but boundaries for self, that was non-existent. But because I didn't have boundaries for myself, for my time, for my schedule, for my self-care, for protected time with my kids with the phone down, because I didn't have, and it's not for the kids, it was for me, that because I didn't have boundaries for myself, it created significant disconnection and hurt me. And one thing you shared afterwards, there was consistency, and reminded me of Jen when I met her. And Jen, I've never said this to you. One thing that I admired, and I'm attracted to leaders that just show consistently, like relentless consistency. But to you, from my side, and you'd have to tell me the story is true at another time, but your self-care, your reading, your development, your want for your people, your execution of your standards and your rest. And it was almost so much like I could see it coming across the room, where it wasn't just about the business. It was like your core beliefs. Anybody, I think, whoever's worked for you can see that core. And that's something, funny enough, there was a testimonial video we shot with you five years ago last week.
Wow.
Which, yeah, it was shocking. It popped up on Facebook yesterday. But your face is weird because it's just timing, but it popped up, and it's that same, there's the same energy in you then than there is now. And I just respect consistency.
Thank you.
So.
Thank you. I mean, it's paramount. Like I again, kind of readying for the wave of summer, I make the joke, ask the staff, I'm like, did you take your vitamins, wear your rollerblades, like that kind of thing. It's important to have that self-care and time away and carving out that time for yourself. We say it, but then we sort of react to when we're a little bit irritable, we know when we're a little bit overrun, and I can see it. I can feel the energy in the room. And I think our job as good leaders is to excavate and to sort of reframe that importance for our leaders as well, to take the time to care for yourself and have that quiet moment with your kids with no phone and things like that.
And Jen, I did get, Jay, we'll let you take a break here after this statement, but I did get that board for your office that has the paddle board times that you go out this year. So it's actually a magnet board. So every time you get a chance, it'll show up to the water's almost warm enough. People won't get that joke, but that's Jen's commitment to self for her self-care is to try to get back on the paddle board based on coming out of the
You've gone more often this year. Hold me to it.
Nice. So that's the goal. So we'll take a quick break here and be right back with Jay and Jen. Awesome. Well, that's been a great start to this conversation, and we had a few questions turned up, and I'm actually going to jump a bit here just to continue with us having a below surface level conversation. This is what I love about leadership, right? Leadership can be tactical and surface level, or we can talk about books, but what we're talking about is experiences and what we're all going through, or what we've been through, what do we learn, and how do we allow that to for us to step into our power as leaders. And I'm not talking to me, Jay, and Jen, for everybody listening here. It's how do we kind of, Jen used, one thing I remembered as you're sharing to Jen, you used that folder example, right? That this is visual. When we met recently, said, based on the pandemic, a lot of people are walking around like they still have this baggage, whether we're carrying it at the bottom arms or kind of on the back of our neck, and it's still in our operation today, and it should be, but at some point, and you actually stood up and did like a physical like display of this, and we got to let that boulder go, right? We got to let it off so we can step forward. And one of the things, the next question I wanted to get into was, what was your biggest leadership lesson during the pandemic? What did you learn about yourself and or your team? And I know it's been a challenging couple of years, and we are at a different chapter of the pandemic, but what do you think what's your biggest lesson learned personally? And Jay, we'll get you to chime in on this one as well.
Okay. Go ahead, Jen.
I think there's just been so much uncertainty. I mean, goodness, the scale of how this pandemic has gone professionally, personally, a lot of people are lost. We're not the best versions of ourselves right now. I still think we're really climbing out of it.
Yeah.
And I think to just sort of be, without sort of glorifying it, like being sort of a North Star and having really calm energy and clarity going into, meetings, the ability to sort of communicate really openly and freely about how uncertain we are with things, from staffing to operations to should we keep the vaccine passport, should we not? And I think that, Matt, one of the people that we love both is Brene Brown, and like that ability to be vulnerability, sort of just saying to your team, I don't have all the answers right now. Yeah. And I think that there's courage in that, and it's not sort of about winning or losing. It's just like, well, here we are, and sitting down. I mean, we've had some really rough time the last sort of 6 to 8 months on the heels of this pandemic, operationally. And it's getting to a room and saying, well, what can we do? I mean, I've gone as far as getting big boards and saying, what are we winning here? What has gone right? And just reframing the thinking. So I've kind of touched on a couple of things, but just the ability to be vulnerable, to be calm, to reassure, even though I could be panicking inside as well. And just sharing that, yeesh, I almost swore there. we're really up a creek here, but here's what we can do.
And how, like, what was the voice in your head the first couple of times you had to go into, and I'm not projecting here, but I've asked a few people this question because it comes up. What was the voice in your head that was coming up when you had to go into a meeting and talk about uncertainty rather than give the answer? So how did you process that, work through? Was it something you were comfortable with? How was going in and saying, hey, it's uncertain right now?
What was the voice in my head? So like what like steered me there, or
just like, how did you feel about not having the answer? So so what I've learned through my work, and I won't get into this now, is there's people operate in certainty or uncertainty. So right. People who operate in absolute certainty the last couple of years has been traumatic, just because they're used to routine, and COVID took away control in a lot of ways, right? It's just, there were so many elements. And then there's other leaders that operate in uncertainty. So I think it's just having leaders share experiences. Do you operate in certainty or uncertainty? And how did you process? How did you talk to yourself? Hey, I should have the answer to this, and I don't, or I don't have the answer to this. It's okay. We're going to figure it out. There's no right path.
You're right. It's I talked about this last year with our restaurant manager a lot. It's sitting in the discomfort and it's being okay with that. It's a lot of sort of just going in and knowing that you're going to go into a difficult meeting where you have to, retract on something that you really wanted to move forward with, but just again, operationally, you can't. I think that sitting and allowing space in those meetings just to say, have we missed anything? My favorite question for Matt is, what does support look like for me, for you? So really just, I don't know, I would go into those meetings and let it sort of be organic, but have a clarity in what I needed to say. totally collaborate. So is there anything that I've missed? And it's worked actually. I kind of, with our staffing shortages, I kind of pitched it to our table and said, I'm running out of options here as to where I can, sort of try to get new staff. And one of our front office managers said something really brilliant. And it sort of changed the course of a whole department. So I think just really leaning on each other, again, being vulnerable in that moment. But I don't know, it's obviously not a good feeling. It's heavy. I've lost a lot of sleep over it, going to these meetings where you have to, you just know you don't have the answers. So I'm not sure if I answered the question, but I mean, basically be open to collaborate and celebrate the wins.
Yeah. No, you did. And again, these are the questions where there's no right answer to them. But what we really got a chance to see for us that's watching is, as you talk through the journey and the recognition, but also that side, right? Like, what we want people to hear is that it's okay for it not to be okay. It's been hard. We made it here. We didn't come this far to only come this far. But we're able to let some of that go. Where are we at and where are we going? And I love, like, one of the best practice side. And some people, this is what I always laugh about. Some people find, me and you both love it, but find some of this stuff cheesy. But when we have grounding boards written with a whiteboard marker that says, what positive happened today? Where's a win? We actually program our minds. This is the neuroscience of the mind. I'm no expert here, but I'm studying it like crazy. Before we wake up and put our feet on the ground, hey, it's going to be a great day. I just went through an incredible podcast on the weekend where that was it from this doctor with 15 letters behind their name. They said if we start there, and they ended every day to say what positive happened today, and they used the story of the day that their dad passed. And this incredible person said, what gives me the right, this voice in the head to say that I've had good experiences the day that my dad passed? And he shared, I still grieved like crazy, but I still saw positive in the worst day that I've ever experienced. It's just, and Simon Sinek talked about this last week, right, Jay? He talked about complete framing of, do we see the challenge in the situation, or how do we shift our language and our mindset to see the progress, the positive? And he used a very sensitive topic I won't get into here, but I was really I was shocked about what he shared of what he's working on now, which there's an opportunity in all areas. We just have to choose to actually program ourselves to see it. Chase, anything to add there?
Yeah, it's funny you say that, Matt, because that's also something that I just started, first of all, being able to do and have guests like Jen on the show, and having you and just knowing you, Matt, over these this short but long time, let's say, in our careers. But being able to do this is, first of all, I feel kind of blessed in a way, being able to talk with people and to hear stories and just do these shows for Canada and the US. But I've been recently waking up, and I don't know if it was Bernie Brown, but no, it was the other lady I told you about, Black Room Class. I forget her name.
Mel Robbins, yep.
Yes, Mel. So Mel was talking about the whole, get up and think positive and your day will become positive. I tell you, I've had that mindset now for a few months. And the things, I don't know if I've joked, I think I joked with you, Matt, is like every day there's another surprise that is happening in my world that necessarily wasn't happening before. It was just like, and then maybe it was, but I wasn't maybe alert to it. But it was like every day, if you're not getting contacted by this company or this area, or this, or that, it's insane, right? So I think that positive mindset, first of all, it's hard. It is hard to get up there and get triggered on it. But if you start working on it, like I said, the muscle thing of leadership, you do the same thing with this positive notion. Especially in our industry, because our industry brings the negative out so much in people. Yeah. We talk about it all the time at the office. We talk about it after work. We talk about it at the bar. It's always the negative, right? Very rarely over my career in this industry have you heard most people in the industry talk positive when they're outside, work or after work, whatever, right? It's always the negative, or who, did this, that, or the bad table or the bad tip or whatever else. But I tell you, if you start thinking in that positive mindset, that is one of the key takeaways, I'll tell you, that I've taken away through COVID and just recently. It is hard, but when you get into it, man, it changes your world big time.
Really good. Sorry, I love actionables, because a lot of people could be hearing these things and then they're like, oh, it's more than just waking up and being like, I'm happy and faking till I make it. There's one activity that I try to end my day with is an email of gratitude. So the last thing, if I'm leaving at 5, at 4:45, I just say thank you to anyone that whether it's a supplier or a housekeeper or whatever, and I try to do that in an email or that kind of thing, and just leaving notes of gratitude. It could be a post-it, goes a long way.
Yeah, I love that, Jen.
Cheesy, but really works.
No. I've done some of that, and I tell you, it's almost like I don't know, is it cleansing?
Yeah,
It's like this. Yeah, you purge all this stuff, but I tell you from the other side of it, when you get those quick little messages, and it's not even about work, it's just thanks again and blah blah blah. Those are so awesome to get, let alone send. I love that, Jen. I love that.
Yeah, try it ending your day. Yeah.
Jay hits me up, and I see that's something like, because you care about it so much, right? You follow up, Jen. I've seen some of your follow-ups. But one thing that I try to anchor this activity is we always think about giving recognition to the other person and how does it make them feel. But Jen, if you could, like, what's one last time where you left one of those notes of gratitude or sent one of those emails? How did it make you feel?
Oh my God, I love to give. Like, actually, the reason that I left journalism was because I felt I was taking information. I'd have to go and knock on doors when someone lost a child, for example, and interviewing them. Whereas on hospitality, so much of what we do is giving and creating an experience. So we have a funny little story. We created something called a You Rock award. We got the biggest boulder we could find in our backyard, and we got You Rock, on a little plaque on it. And we gave it out to a server actually who just went above and beyond to create a great guest experience. She created a scavenger hunt for guests. So we presented her with that last Saturday. And she signs the rock with a Sharpie. And then we're going to create a You Rock garden every year. We'll have a 2022 award. It costs nothing. It's $5 for the plaque. But oh my God, it puts wind in my sails. That's how I felt. It put wind in my sails, and gratitude's everything. And it just comes back full circle. She goes the extra mile, and I think it's because of those little things. It's just little, I don't know, it fills me up, fills up my cup too. So it felt great.
Yeah. No, I love that. And that's part of the idea of the exercise, right? Is usually the person giving recognition gets as much reward as the person receiving it. And if we can we actually create a process around recognition. Who did you recognize for what? How did they react? And I can send anybody who wants this, that we have a template because we actually want to write it out. So we anchor it. And then how did it make you feel? So if we can get people to connect with how it made you feel giving the feedback, then people tend to do it more often. So recognition is free. It's the biggest impact you could possibly have on your culture. And it is something that we just need based on how busy we are, as Jen started, right? When she moved from 27, and her biggest lesson was, if I could slow down and recognize more or connect more or engage more, a little bit of time there, and it's incredible, the result. So one thing, I just want to jump into another question here. So this is one that's a little bit deeper connection here for me, and we're not going deep in conversation here, but I think this is a powerful, important question. So often what we're talking about with leaders is what do their people need to do differently? So I'll end up in a conversation where I just wish my managers, leaders, senior SLT team, staff would do this different. But a lot of times change starts with leadership. And the question that I'd like us all to look to answer is, in order for your team, your operation, your company, your business to get the results that it wants and deserves, what do you need to do different as a leader? What do you need to focus on to create the space, time, and path for the team? In general, I'll go to you with that question. Yeah, I said, yeah. Can I say, so what do you need to do different? So how do you need to grow? What do you need to do different to get your team the results it wants and deserves? Rather than them do different, what do you need to do?
What do I need to do different? I need to, maybe I'm twisting the question to make it about them, but I think empowering people to self-organize. I can overcommit and under-deliver. So I think just really empowering people to organize by, that expression of hiring people that are smarter than you, really empowering them to take the bird's eye view of their department, looking at what the problems are, presenting me with solutions, and then I can help them through it. But, it's a hotel there's a lot of moving parts, and, our housekeeping team is big, a little big. They're small but mighty, we'll say. But I really want to, for example, encourage that housekeeping manager to help her actually to self-organize herself so that she can be ready for a roaring summer, getting to the next level and that kind of thing. So I would say, I guess, I don't know, even for myself, just prioritizing what matters, getting into the ear of sort of the ambassadors, our front desk agents, our servers. And I think that's, if that makes sense, I think just kind of, then we have the ability to close more loops.
Yeah. No, I love it. And I think it's even thinking as we think about your housekeeping leader and just, what we're doing is creating a framework and coaching it out and creating a standard and an expectation. So what we need to change is create the expectation for our people in that space. So how do they block time or organize or, but what we're doing as a leader, we need to change is setting the expectation. One of my favorite quotes comes from James Clear, and it's come up like 12 times in the last week. Like it just keeps coming up on different things I read or listen to. But we don't rise to our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. I'll say that again to be dramatic. Like it's not about our goals. Our goals are a destination. What gets us there or not are our systems, and our systems are our ability to not overcommit, our ability to create space for conversation. Like all of these, whatever your processes are. But if we can have the right processes or systems, then we'll get to the goal. But if we put too much focus on the finish line, we often don't get out of the starting gate. Mm-hmm. Jay, just as we look, I'd love to hear your side. You've got a lot of growth in what you're doing here with the network. As you said, your phone's ringing off the hook with opportunities. You've got other great companies that want to be involved. But in order for you to take that continued big step forward, and I'd say you're not kind of starting your stride, you're almost through the stride. What do you need to change in order to step into what's possible for you and the work you do?
That's a heavy question.
Very poorly worded, but I think you guys get it.
I get it. It's all good. I think, I think a lot of people go, we got to reflect and, we got to give more time to myself. I do those things. I think the things I need to work on is continuing to educate myself in the space that I'm working in, right? And I do that every day. I'm learning something different or listening or trying something new, failing. But I think that's where I would say I've got to continue and to work on more is just the continued education. I'm a big education guy. I'd go to school if I could for life and take classes and courses at university. I love that stuff, but I think more of that is just allowing myself to educate, take the time to pause, think. When you're a creative mind set person, I think your mind just goes into 24/7. Mine won't stop, right? Like I'm trying to reinvent things, or I'm trying to just stir up things to make an impact, and those things sometimes I just want to be, like wake up and just do the normal thing once in a while. So maybe that's another area I need to work on, just being normal, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word, but you know what I'm saying? Like just having that relaxed day of non-chaos maybe is another thing I got to work on, but just continue to educate myself and do. Here's another thing I think I need to work on more, and I think this is also just a huge shout out to Jen on this as well, is having these conversations in this industry. I'm sitting back here listening to this conversation today. This stuff didn't happen when I was running restaurants. This stuff not even on the radar. And I worked with the big chains like the Keg and those places. I worked in those big restaurants like that, and I worked in small ones and ran clubs and all those things. But we did not have these conversations. I think a lot of the bad things that happened back in those days maybe wouldn't have happened, or it would have been a different world. But I'm so grateful for the conversations like this, because it wasn't happening. And restaurateurs need to listen to this stuff. And I think chefs and restaurateurs, hoteliers, and everyone else in the industry needs to listen to this, because this is the future of our industry, is having open and honest conversations like this. And I think that's also an area I would say that we got to, I'll continue, Matt, and work on, is making sure that we have these venues like this to be able to have conversations like this, because our industry needs to listen to this. It's not the old days, like you just work and treat your staff like crap and scream at them, get mad. All those things are gone.
Yeah.
And or on their way out, let's say. But this is incredible. Like our industry.
Kudos to you, if I may say. Kudos to you, Jay, because your self-awareness is fantastic. You said, I used to be all about a leader that was all about me, but that's what that's what it was before. And this is how we are never going to get the buy-in from staff. We're dealing with a whole other beast now. And I think that we need to come at things differently. And the fact that you're having this conversation and shining a light on it and has a platform to do it is remarkable. And it's huge progress. So, the conversation just continues, but good on you for sort of like kind of that self-reflection and introspection of I need to do that more. Yeah, I need to stop and take a minute and connect more. It's good.
Yeah, thank you.
Kudos.
Yeah. And that's, I love, because Jay and you both, right? It's been a really fun almost hour here. We'll go through one more question, but you're both on your own journey as you answer these questions. I know you can't see it when you're in it, but I get a chance to sit back here today and like Jen, I can see as you answer and you kind of go internal, right? Into these thoughts and process where you are. Did you just see Jay do it? He's kind of answering and you saw it, right? So that's his leadership, right? We're watching. So part of the keys of leadership is just creating space to be present and be there for people. And, we saw Jay share this beautiful expression and he actually to go somewhere else that's, a couple, and I don't know why the word of the day is go a couple layers deeper in the texture of the conversation. But it's great to watch people as we create space because some people haven't had the time to have these conversations or in person or even virtually. That's why so often I ask people how they're doing in one-on-one sessions or workshops with my clients, and there's emotion there because no one's asked in a long time in a different setting where it didn't want something in return. And I applaud you both for sharing, the real feedback around where you're at and what you're working on and where your people are. Because we have to have a different conversation around leadership, what led to our results pre-pandemic, even if you're the most successful restaurant group in your city, will not lead to success. It will not guarantee success in a post-pandemic landscape. The people side of the business is fundamentally shifted. You have a choice. There's not a right or wrong answer, but you have a choice to take a new approach to your people or stay the course. I think we can see from the sharing from Jay and Jen today, the massive opportunity to move forward. But the last question that I want to ask, and Jen, we'll start with you, is if there's one lesson you could go back and share with or teach or influence on your 20-year-old self in this industry as you were looking forward, what's that one lesson you wish you could go back and share with yourself to set you on a faster path, different path?
Goodness. Okay, a really silly answer is invest in good shoes. Invest in good shoes as a server back then. That's silly. No, I think whatever meditation looks like to you, I wish I had done earlier. And that means sort of if your meditation is on a fishing boat or on a bike ride or, kickboxing, whatever that is, I'd say self-care. I'd wish I'd done that earlier. I was just going at 90 miles a minute and wanted to say yes to every opportunity. So I would say meditation and good shoes.
And what does your meditation routine look like now? Like, how does that show up for you? Is it on your paddleboard? Is it doing actual meditation? Just so people get some examples of how do you take a little bit of time for self?
If I can make the plug, the Honest Guys on YouTube, it's called the Honest Guys, and it's their meditations. They can be for, calming you down, for clarity, for if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you can't sleep. So I just do guided meditations that can be 5 to 38 minutes. It doesn't matter. I do it in the morning when I wake up. I don't touch my phone. I just put that on before I go to sleep. It just quiets the mind. And then I find I really come back to that sort of calming the waters below the surface, silencing the traffic in the mind and that kind of stuff. I'm not like huge into it, but I find that it makes a difference when I can sort of just kind of center myself when, as leaders, you have everything coming at you and you have to answer every question and put out every fire and see how I just go. You just need to breathe sometimes. So that, and I mean, gosh, yeah, you know me, I'm a paddleboard freak. So when I'm on the water and enjoying the sun and when I step out of the seaweed and my board after I've gone for 2 hours, I'm a little sunburned. Oh my God. I feel like a mermaid. I feel like, I feel like the best ever. So that's sort of hand in hand. But anyway, that's the best advice I give myself is to do it, taking care of that earlier, Yep.
Perfect. I love it. And Jay, what's one lesson for your 20-year-old self?
Build your self-brand at the beginning. That was mine.
Wow.
I think that's the key. Is if you're not built, and we didn't know that. I always beat myself up, and I always go, I sort of build my self brand. It was actually my leader before that. She said, "You got to build your self brand, Jay." So I said, "Okay, let's just try this thing out. And I tell you, if I could go back, 10, 20 years ago and say, okay, start building your self brand right now. Because it's so new to a lot of people as well. It's not building your self brand, but I would say that would be the one thing I would do differently, or I would tell myself back then, is start working on that, because I was working on everything else but my own self brand. And when you work on that, I tell you, the doors, they open everywhere. It's crazy. So that's what I would say to myself back then, is work on that.
Love it. I appreciate you both share. I'll share here just because with me, and because it's a conversation with peers and friends, I can feel even emotion behind the question as I look to answer it. So I can feel little tears in my eyes, but I wish my 20-year-old self that I told myself to believe in myself, just about what's actually possible when you get out of your own way. There's so much noise and so much what I couldn't do and who I couldn't be or who I should be that I felt I wasn't. And I think if I could just believe in myself, I go back to my 20-year-old self and share that story and say, hey, look, you've got it in here. Don't be afraid to put it out there. Build your brand, invest in yourself and be the person that you can be. And a little bit more fearless. That's what I wish I could go back and share. One thing I want to go just do a roundtable here. What's your number one takeaway from our time together? So if we look, an hour, and I'll share first to give you a second to think about. But I think for all of us in the conversation, I've got, as you see me writing, I've got quite a few notes here just from our conversation. But what I think about when I look at both of you and I have a chance to be in this great conversation is your clarity, right? Just the clarity of who you want to be, what you're building, communicating that clarity, creating space, like how it shows up. And for me, because I know both of you well, it shows up differently in your space. But when we're clear on what we want to achieve, that path, we're able to make the changes. And I also want to applaud you both for your incredible strength and vulnerability. Just your storytelling, your self-reflection. I love the conversation and love to hear from you. What did you take? What's your core takeaway from today? Jen?
For me, I would say the kind of a theme that I saw, we talked about Mark and what gave him the right to open this place. And Jay, when you were saying like some of those things about I wish I had branded myself or been more sort of self-aware of that. The takeaway I'd say is to sort of highlight to be the CEO of your own life. You can have whatever you want. Sounds cheesy, but really just being able to manifest that. You have the ability to stop what you don't like. You have the ability to start what you would like. So I feel empowered. That's my takeaway today, to just kind of filtering that to my team as well, that you're your own CEO, you're the boss of you. You write your resume, you sell yourself. So that's my biggest takeaway.
Love it. Thank you. And Jay, to wrap us up for the show, what's your takeaway, my man?
First of all, thank you both for doing this conversation as well today on our network. And I think just really the industry needs to listen to this stuff. I know some people don't have the time, or today we'll put this up on our Spotify channel so you can listen to it on a podcast when you're driving home or working out. But I really think my takeaway is the industry needs to do more of this and to have conversations, because there's a lot of restaurateurs out there that haven't shifted and are not maybe getting the employees or having problems with labor, but all these things add up to a great place to work. And when we have great places to work, we make a lot of money, and it turns all out right in the long run. But I think the big takeaway is having more conversations like this on a regular basis about it that's within our industry is my key takeaway, and it's so positive. So thank you both for having this conversation today, because we need to have more of it. It's just simple, right? We've talked enough about food costs and inflation and all these other things that we all know it's not great, but these conversations like this around leadership and stuff will help with those other things. I truly believe in that.
Well said.
Does that sound good?
It sounds genuine.
It's okay.
To me, it sounds real and it sounds genuine. So just one thing from my side is with the work that I'm doing, I'm so grateful for Jay and the network, the SVK network, and also Cisco for creating space for the conversation. It's easier for somebody, Jay, in your position, or especially Cisco's, not to create the space for this conversation because it is deeper. It is less clear and less tactical. And I am grateful for the platform I'm grateful for my friendship, Jay, with you, and Jen, also my friendship with you, and how much I respect and admire you as a leader, and hope you keep kicking butt out there in Stratford. And
Thanks.
Jay, thanks again for another great show.
Awesome. And thanks again. And to everyone else, we're back on Thursday with Technomic. Margot is going to drop in and share. She was just coming back from the NRA show, so we'll hear some stuff on there.
He is incredible. Yeah, I'm excited, really excited for that show.
Right. And then we have Influencer Friday, and then Chef Vikram from the Dragon's Den, as you may have watched him way back in the day. He's on the show on Friday celebrating Asian Heritage Month. So we're going to finish off this month with him. So anyways, thanks again, everybody. And thanks again, Jen and Matt.
Thank you.
Thanks again for hosting today. So have a great rest of your week, everyone, and get out there and support an industry. Cheers.